Hey, folks, Zach Osterman here, IU Insider, Indianapolis Star. He is Mike Niziolek, Bloomington Herald-Times. This is Mind Your Banners for Thursday, February 5th. Mike, you look resplendent. You look like you've seen the sun, which is really more than most of us can say.
Yeah, I asked if the snow was still here from when I left or new snow, and apparently it's the same snow.
It is. I would say it is aggressively the same snow. Like it is almost offensively the same snow. But you didn't. Did it even rain on you in LA, or did you get like the full Pasadena treatment this time around?
It was unseasonably warm.
You went golfing, tennis, the beach,
and some tennis. Yes.
We will talk about your West Coast road trip and just generally sort of where things are with Darren DeVries' team in a little bit. I did want to just sort of, I guess almost as much as anything else, just like check in on football. Like you remarked before we started that there's not a ton to talk about, but I think it is. I think it is worth pointing out, and I'll have a video on this tomorrow talking about it maybe a little bit more in depth, but just like this is maybe the first time in a while that it feels like normal service is resumed over there. I know that Curt Cignetti's talked about how like this is the time where he takes a little bit of time off. He gives his staff a little bit of time off. But you do feel like that after the welcome disruption of the CFP run, Indiana is into what you would consider much more familiar territory in January, February, off-season workouts, early enrollees, junior days, prepping for spring camp.
Well, I did forget. I mean, it's funny because we had mentioned the possibility of Whitmer leaving, and he ended up leaving right since our last podcast and going to Tampa Bay. And so, but they did hire a familiar face, which I guess maybe was why it's not a huge like seismic shift or anything. Obviously, they bring back Tino Sansari as quarterbacks coach, and I think they had maybe 24 hours between the hire with the strength coach. I mean, like Cignetti moved quickly and also had names in kind of his orbit that he picked. And Sansari made just a whole lot of sense in terms of, with less runway in terms of the offseason, trying to acclimate a new coach that maybe doesn't know kind of all of what you're doing or kind of how you do it. Bringing Tino back, I thought made a lot of sense to sort of, just kind of get back to what they were doing. I mean, he was with the staff for 4 years previously. I mean, it just made all the sense in the world that, given the timing of what they were facing with the offseason to have him back.
Yeah, I mean, like I think the point you make is a really valuable one, which is just like you don't have a ton of time. Like Josh Hoover's already on campus. The offense is the offense. Right. Like there's the idea that you're not going to need any time for the new guy to figure out the scheme, the process, why meetings are structured this way instead of that way, where their parking space is. Like there is a simplicity to it that I think is very valuable for Indy and frankly for Tino Sansari too, right? I mean, like you don't. I mean, Curt Cignetti's talked many times in different ways about what you can put a coach in position to fail the same way you can put a player in position to fail. And I think there's an extent to which it feels like this is one where, I mean, listen, if Tino Sansari, like just on his resume alone, this is a perfectly sound hire. This is a very good hire. He's got tons of history with Cignetti and Shanahan. He's got a ton of success, coaching the position, et cetera. But I think your point is valid too, which is it's also giving a guy an opportunity to step in and start having a positive impact very quickly at a time when, frankly, you need him to because, and again, this is a welcome problem, but the offseason isn't going to be compressed for Indiana. They played a full month of football that they didn't a year ago. They had to turn over their strength and conditioning program. That anybody who needed like an off-season surgery or some time off was going to got that a month later than they did a year ago. They're probably going to start spring practice later, although they're going to end it at roughly the same time. So I mean, it just like it makes sense not just because of the resume of the coach, but also because of maybe the needs from the position right now.
Yeah, and with the way Cignetti talked about Whitmer even last year, I mean, he didn't really sort of open up and kind of get comfortable. I mean, he said, like, he talked kind of about teaching him the process for, like, that entire spring almost, that like he needs to kind of learn what we want and how, and he brought a lot to the position and really helped Fernando. But I mean, there was a way that, there were things that they wanted him to do, and obviously learn. And so, and that's not something that Tino has to go through, that onboarding process. And so, like you said, you have a veteran, and I think with a veteran like Josh Hoover, I mean, you just want to hit the ground running and get him set up, right? Like there's no time to waste. And obviously the expectations are going to even be higher next year now, with obviously coming off the title. So no, I thought it made sense. And, now it seems hard to imagine, maybe they can, but like, there's really not much college openings out there. I mean, it's really NFL stuff. And, Whitmer had the NFL connections. I don't think there's anybody left on the staff that does or had been sort of prominent NFL experience, to lose anybody else at this point, sort of in the cycle.
Yeah, no, I mean, I mean, you're right. Like most of those, I mean, I think the only staff still maybe being filled out is the Raiders, right? Because Clint Kubiak is going to take over there after the Super Bowl. But I mean, in general, yeah, no, it's you do feel like it's in all likelihood it's sort of settled, and I think it's it almost feels like, and I know that coaches, including Curt Cignetti, would rather have the spring window to maybe solve some problems post spring practice, but it does feel a little bit more like everybody just gets to go into the spring sort of saying, this is it. Like, this is the team. This is the staff. Like, there's not going to be like this next round of uncertainty or flux, right? That
right.
What if we lose guys we don't want to after spring practice, or what if there's some, I mean, you can always have some unexpected coaching change, but I just think in general, it does feel like there's, again, whether everyone wanted it or not, a little bit more certainty available to these programs this year, which prompts me, and you and I will dig more into off-season storylines. I know we've both talked we've talked sort of privately about stuff we're going to put together in the next few weeks. But I did want to just kind of like ask you, almost just for your, just kind of like the two or three things that you think you will be watching most, at least in like the philosophical sense, storylines wise, around this team heading into not just spring camp, because we don't, let's be honest, see a ton of spring camp, but just sort of like the questions we will be asking in the back of our mind about this team over the next few months.
I don't know yet. I mean, like I feel like, somebody was talking about it in the comments in terms of like what the culture looks like. I think what the next wave of leaders is probably a good question. Because they brought a lot back. I think some of the more prominent faces in the locker room are gone. I mean, I think the two exceptions, obviously, Carter Smith and Tyreek Tucker, probably, and the linebackers obviously have quite a bit of experience. Isaiah Jones, I know, will probably be comfortable in a spot like that, and he's obviously been in Indiana a long time. But other guys, I mean, they were like 12 deep in terms of like guys that were comfortable sort of leading the locker room, giving those speeches that just kick off practice. Like, to see who that next wave of guys is, who gets them acclimated to sort of Cignetti's winning standard, because that is important, and I think that is sort of what Cignetti talked about almost his entire first offseason here. It was just sort of like guys beating the standard that this coaching staff expects. And so, like, who's the voices? Obviously, you just have the lone voice from JMU left, Tucker, but like, then who are the guys that sort of now kind of go forward with? A couple of them are Indiana holdovers, not guys that had any JMU experience, but who's that next wave of leaders? Because I think, he had talked about that, like, this was a unique, even this last team they had, one of the reasons I think they did have success was because it was such a unique locker room, that they had guys of such high character, and that, like, it was like kind of across the board that, like, everywhere you turn there was leaders, and so you lost a lot of that because like 20, I think it was 27 or 32, I can't remember the numbers, but I mean, just a huge amount of guys that left, right, with seniors out of eligibility. And so how do you replace that? Because I think talent wise, Like I don't have a ton of questions like what they have talent wise. Like they filled a lot of those. I mean, if
they're higher up than you would expect for how many notable players are leaving. They are higher up some of these early like returning production charts than I think people realize.
Right, because they're returning half the starters on both sides of the ball still, even with what they lost. And the guys they brought back, like if you go, okay, maybe even if Cincinnati doesn't have as high of a success rate in the transfer portal this cycle, not 95%, even if it's like 80%, like you feel pretty good because they have decent depth sort of across most positions. So you sort of feel like there's not a ton of holes. I mean, absent injuries, obviously things happen, but like the talent maybe isn't the question. It's more sort of the stuff around it, like, and then like the disease of more, obviously, with winning a championship, how does that impact things? But you lose a lot of the guys that maybe that would have been an issue with. But like, I don't know. That to me is sort of the biggest sort of overarching question. Like talent wise, I mean, yeah, there's like questions around the edges, but it's not like there's a huge. I mean, maybe tight end is sort of like the football question that I had, but like outside of that, there's not a ton like that.
No, I mean, like philosophically, it's almost. I know Kursigiani doesn't do captains, but it's like philosophically, like who are the four that go out for the the coin toss? Like it was pretty steady most of this year, right? It was like 4 of like 5 or 6: Coogan, Nowakowski, Surratt, Fisher, one or two others. Like who's in that group? Like you brought up Isaiah Jones, Amari Farrell, I think is probably in that group.
Amari Farrell's a good one, yeah.
Carter Smith certainly. Charlie Becker maybe.
But it's ironic that they've got it's all Indiana guys that held over, right? No Jamie,
right? Like I mean, it is going to be that a little bit more. I think like and I guess full disclosure, I'm taking a little time off next week, and so I kind of loaded up a bunch of like position, just sort of like basically sort of post portal where things stand pieces that'll run over the next few weeks, which honestly was as useful for me as anything, just to remind myself of like what had changed, because everything was happening all at the same time, right? Like it was, Indiana was reloading at all these positions while we were trying to figure out, who had the advantage in the pass offense versus defense in the Peach Bowl and stuff like that. To talk about like the football part of it specifically, a couple things jumped out. Number one, tight end is the big question mark. Real quickly, IU grad Mark said BB isn't healthy yet. Is he? No, I talked to him about a week and a half ago. He is, or a little less than a week ago. He is on pace, he said, to be back full go by fall camp. So he said he's about 4 months out from his surgery, or his whatever was necessary to fix his injury. And he said, I think he said he's basically got about 4 more months to go. So he's about at the halfway point, and he's on pace to be ready for fall camp. Tight end is the big one. They do not have basically anything at tight end in terms of proven production. I think they like Brock Schott. Signetti told the Big Ten Network this week that Schott actually, I think, is going to miss most or all of the spring season because of a labrum injury.
Which makes it more interesting that they didn't add anybody,
right? Like, but they kind of chose to do that, right? Like they did, it wasn't like they, it wasn't some big ambitious move when they got Riley Nowakowski and Holden Stays. We didn't look at those pickups last year and say, oh my God, Indiana's looking for some game changers at tight end. Those were pretty standard like portal additions. They chose not to do that when I'm sure they could have found somebody if they wanted them. So for whatever reason, they like what they have. The thing that stuck with me, and forgive me for leaning on almost like a soccer aphorism, but there's a phrase in soccer when you talk about the strength of your center forward, your midfielders, your central defenders, and your goalie, that the spine of your team is really strong, and that like if the players in the middle of the field where the most action is going to be are really, really good, you're probably going to be good. Indiana's got 4 starting offensive linemen back, with a 5th that essentially counts as a Big Ten starter from Wisconsin. And the spine of its defense is really good. Like with Tyreek Tucker and Mario Landino at tackle, I know they lose Aiden Fisher. They kind of chose not to recruit an Aiden Fisher replacement. If you look at it, they had 1 or 2 really productive linebackers on campus, and it almost felt more like they were saying, if we can get a player of that quality, we'll take them, but we don't simply need like a like for like, this linebacker's gone, so we go find the best one we can to replace him. And then they've got tons of depth at safety between, guys they've got back like Baldwin and Farrell, and guys they're bringing in like Preston Zachman and Jaquan Sanks. The spine of that defense looks really tough. Very experienced, very productive. There's depth there. And I just think if we're talking about what's on the field, if I'm Indiana, I like the idea that at the point of attack and straight through the middle of my offense and my defense, I've got a lot that I feel like I can count on.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the Fisher thing was that Isaiah Jones did it, right? And
Yeah.
he stepped up in that moment. What was it?
They had that one. What was his name? Owen Long, the crazy.
Yeah, they had him on campus. Like, I just viewed it as more of a third linebacker. Like, I didn't think that they were.
If we can get a player of that quality, we'll get him. But we don't need to simply replace Aiden Fisher.
Right. I think Jones is he's going to be the green dot. What I'm guessing. That's not don't know for sure, but just based on the way they talked and way. Was it Maryland that he was in the lineup?
Yeah, he took the green dot when Fisher was injured,
but I just didn't know if that was the Maryland game. I couldn't remember. So the Maryland game, but then he got rave reviews, and I guess the way they've been working it, he had been kind of aware that was sort of like they had talked to him about that, and he was prepping that way in terms of just that was going to be his responsibility, sort of going in the future maybe. But no, it like. Offensively, and you just feel like on paper, like they've got this, and some people were saying maybe another running back, but I think, we're intrigued by Kobe Martin, obviously, and then, BB coming back from the injury. He showed, obviously, when he's been healthy, sort of with UAB and here he was, a player. But on paper, you feel good, I think, about the skill positions and the way this coaching staff, if there's something beyond quarterback, what they've done well, it's developed skill positions at every spot they've been in and, maximize the talent, whether they have to go run heavy or not, whether it's receivers or not, we tight ends, they've developed tight ends pretty consistent, or guys that have been what they needed in the offense, not necessarily, flashy guys that put up, 1,000 yards.
They fit the scheme to the skills well.
Right. And so you just sort of feel like with Nick Marsh, with Charlie Becker, with the running back room they have, like the talent's there, and with the way that they've developed guys going back to their time, basically at IUP, you sort of say like, yeah, I think that, they moved the ball forward in terms of what they were able to land. And, you lose Omar Cooper, but you don't necessarily you're not fretting, you would have liked to have him back. He would have been great, especially with another year in this offense, but it wasn't like panic mode or anything. You felt like they did enough to sort of kind of soften the blow of what they lost. I think it would have been harder, and this is not a knock on Cooper, but to your point about the offensive line, I think it would have been harder to replace a Carter Smith.
No, I mean, I think that's fair, and I think there are some other, bits and pieces that I mean, if you ask me who I think the biggest replacement is, for me, it's D'Angelo Pons, just because he was such a kind of an all-weathers playmaker, if you think about
it. Is that no qualification, except Fernando Mendoza or quarterback? You think he?
I mean, the thing is, I even have, there's, I mean, of course, it's not the idea of replacing a Heisman Trophy winner, but, there's even such form for this staff. Eddie pointed out, he's had, an all-conference quarterback, 6 years in a row or something. The staff is able to take the quarterback and just –
right.
It's you just think about all the moments, and we don't need to, we'll kind of pull up the reins on this in a second, but you just think about all the different moments Pons had in the last 2 years, the interceptions, the block punts, he literally even got a first down in the Oregon game. That still remains to me one of the most bizarre moments of the season, when suddenly we looked up and I was like, is that D'Angelo Pons running for a first down on a wide receiver screen? But no, I'm with you in the sense that, I don't think talent's the issue. I think, the question is just, can you sustain that culture? You're also at a place where, you probably are going to start seeing freshmen peek through a little bit more, not a ton, not a lot, but maybe just that a little bit more. And it's noticeable how many guys Indiana did not retain red shirts on last year, even though maybe you didn't notice them playing a ton. And that sort of felt maybe a little bit like a.
Wasn't it 4 guys?
No, guys like Jalen Bell, Davion Chandler, guys that.
It was only 4 guys. I think both years it was four guys didn't redshirt. It was the same number.
I'll double check that. I think it's a little bit higher than that last year, but it's guys that
2 receivers, 2 defensive backs. That's it. And then the year before that, it was Hardy, Becker, and Ndukwe.
Either way, the point is,
either way.
Stop. Just stop.
What do you mean, either way?
Go back to Los Angeles. Go back to Los Angeles. The point is, it's more kind of the idea that, like, I think this staff almost looks at, like, I think there are staffs that say we have to hold the red shirt. You know what I mean? Like, we plan around maintaining the red shirt. I think this staff looks at some young guys and says, like Becker a year ago, we'd rather play him, even if you don't notice how much he's playing, we're going to play him because in a year we're going to need him to step into something bigger. And like,
but I think this staff, by and large, like, really does want development. Like, that will.
No doubt. I just don't think
this is 95% to redshirt, and then the exceptions are the exceptions to the rule. Like those, like you said, like, we see talent, so we'll play them. But like the majority are the goal is to always redshirt people to sort of use that time to develop them, and like the Baldwins are the exception. The Beckers are the exception.
But like, did you realize, for example, that Jalen Bell played in 13 games this year?
Yeah, it was special teams though.
Yeah, and that's my point. And I think there are guys where they say that the difference between 4 years and 5 years is not as great as snaps now, because maybe a year from now we're talking about Jalen Bell the way that we talked about like Elijah Hardy a year ago or something like that. That's my point.
Right, but I'm saying there will always be a handful, but they did not shift their philosophy last year. Like, it was the same amount.
No, I don't think they shifted their philosophy. I just think it's interesting, the handful that they identify every year. That's more my point. Is like, I think it's
the same number. You said it was more, but a lot more, but it was.
Well, you wouldn't stop yelling at me.
No, you said it was notably more. It was like, no,
you wouldn't just stop cutting me off.
I wanted to give you a birthday present. I just wanted to yell at you.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very kind. 27 years young today. You were in LA. Obviously Indiana, maybe kind of a frustrating one late Tuesday night, a game that I think, it felt just from his tone like Darren DeVries thought got away from him a little bit, but just in general, I think Indiana, like, it's probably fair to say, at least for the moment, has kind of found its feet a little bit again here. They won 3 in a row before they lost that game. They've added a couple quad one wins. They are probably right side of the bubble right now. Not like, there's not a ton of space between them and the bubble, but they're probably the right side of it at the moment. The metrics are holding up. I guess first and foremost, just like what's your feel, again, as somebody who was with this team out in Los Angeles, like, what is just your feel for the vibe on this group as it kind of hits the home stretch here?
Well, they left, I think, and they were not 32 in the net rankings, and now they're 33 in the net rankings. So, take that as what you will. Like we said, they add the 2 quad one wins, but that one was a sort of one that you got to gave away on Tuesday. And I think that there is some frustration in terms of like, because like you kind of felt like, oh, now the escalator's going up, right? Like, this team's figured it out or looking to sort of put the pieces together. Oh, Nick Dorn in the starting lineup maybe has unlocked sort of this potential, and you sort of kind of, what is the ceiling? And I know you wrote sort of an article about like, oh, Nick Dorn kind of raises it. Is it even higher? Is it like a 6 seed or something like that? I don't know if you said that, but just in terms of like,
I wouldn't go that far, but
I'm saying, like, is it higher than a bubble team? And it just feels like that they will not get far from the bubble.
No.
So, and maybe that's lower than I think when it started, when it kind of, they got up to the hot start and it looked like they had a lot of shooters. That team on Tuesday night looked like consciously trying to avoid offense other than just giving the ball to Lamar. Like, nobody looked, Dorn was confident enough that he'll put his shot up from anywhere, but like,
Dorn was trying, he just couldn't find it.
So. But like, it just, they don't right now have the right mix. And it's like, Tucker's obviously going through this huge slump, and DeVries said, his father, Darren, said that he's never really kind of gone through something like this, or this extended, right? Like, you can have like 5 or 6 games, but like, this is something, even when you kind of go back to his freshman year, like at Drake, like he did, and that was when he was kind of trying to figure out the college level. He was still shooting better and had better nights. Like, this is rough, and I know he's trying to be more of a facilitator, but like what they need from him is more of a mix, right? Like he makes winning plays, yes, even when he's not scoring, but it's not enough for a team that has a bunch of guys that on offense can't get you much. Like you got Connor Enright playing big minutes, right?
There aren't enough guys that can just sort of like heat up a game. And I think the reason why Dorn felt potentially sort of, paradigm shifting for this team was he could. Right. That too many of these other guys have to get their offense in some pretty specific ways. Like they've got to get it sort of in the flow of maybe being left in help, or, you probably, I mean, I certainly think Indiana hoped Reed Bailey would be a little bit more of an consistent offensive outlet, not necessarily always scoring, but either scoring or creating for others than he's done. You don't have a natural, and I know Indiana fans were kind of thrilled to move away from post-up offense, but you don't have a natural post-up offense, which is, in fairness, a pretty simple way to get, some decent quality offense if you do it right. You don't want to pin it all on Tucker DeVries. I mean, to your point, like I was just counting here roughly. I think I don't think he's ever in a season had fewer than like 4 games of single-digit scoring, like his entire career, something like that. 4, maybe.
Well, this is the first time. I don't know if you read my story. This is the first time he scored under double digits in 3 straight games in his entire career.
Yeah, I think it's either 4 or 5 his first year at Drake. Single-digit scoring.
And this was only the second time in his career. The Tuesday game was the only second time in his career he's only been held to 1 field goal. So I mean, this is not normal. Like, he's got 5. He's got 5 games under 10 points since January 13th. I mean, it's not like he's not trying. Like he's constructed in a way, he's
putting up shots. Like he's trying to find his offense. It's just not. It's not coming for him.
And like you said, we're not blaming him. It's understandable that he struggled. He's kind of come through the other side of these injuries. It's hard. But the way the roster was constructed, the importance of him being an offensive-minded sort of player was greater than what they're getting, and so it just magnifies the problem. Like, it's not all on him. The struggles are not all on him. No. It's like when he's like this, they where they go for answers, and like if Dorn doesn't heat it up like he has been the last couple nights, Lamar can't do it alone, and they just don't have enough other pieces.
Think about it this way: like who defeats an opponent's game plan on this team? Lamar Wilkerson does. To your point, when he can find his 3-point shooting range, Dorn does. But you needed Tucker DeVries to be one of those other guys that just became. And I think I got asked on a radio appearance this week, is he healthy? I said I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. Obviously, I said I think the question maybe is less like, is he healthy today? And more, to your point, is there a compounding of some of the injuries he's had to deal with the last 2 or 3 years? I understand it's easy for, a newly minted 27-year-old like myself to see these guys as young and athletic and in shape and whatever. 131 games is a lot of basketball, though, especially for somebody who played a ton of minutes in those games, who had the ball a lot in those games, who was probably getting a lot of physical defensive attention in those games. My point is simply, the question may be, and you kind of talked about it there, less like what is the physical health now, and more, is there just kind of a miles on the clock question? But yes, to your point, like he has done some really good stuff away from scoring. He's if you look at Big Ten games only, he's top 25 right now in steal rate, assist rate, and defensive rebound rate. Like he's making a lot of winning plays for Indiana. He's playing a ton of minutes. He's 15th in the conference in percentage of minutes played in Big Ten play alone. It's just Indiana didn't bring Tucker DeVries in to be a sort of a Swiss Army knife. Indiana brought Tucker DeVries in to be something tantamount to what Lamar Wilkerson has been, or what John Blackwell has been, to use Wisconsin as an example coming into this weekend, or, Chad Baker-Mazara for USC or whatever. And he just hasn't been able to consistently find that. And that has left Indiana in a place where if the overall function works, then Indiana can score points and win. And that's why it does increasingly, to me anyway, feel like the way home for Indiana is just, can you go 5-0 in your last 5 home games, which is, I think, reasonable. I don't think it's guaranteed, but like I think they can win those 5 games. But you don't have quite the individual level of game-changing ability you thought you would, because Tucker DeVries has just not been able to find his offense at the level that we recognized he was capable of.
And that puts them 5-2, 4-10 in quad 1 games then?
That sounds right. I think they'd only pick up one more quad 1 if they did that.
No, yeah. So 3-10 in quad 1, because Michigan State's the only quad 1 left at home.
Yeah.
Or no, Ohio State's away though. Okay, so
Ohio State's away. Ohio State is a quad 1. Michigan State,
so 4-10.
They have 4 that are basically guaranteed to be quad 1s, and then I think it's unlikely Wisconsin gets there. But if Wisconsin catches fire, maybe that turns into a quad 1. But 3 of the 4 are away from home: Illinois, Purdue, and Ohio State.
So they end up with 4 quad 1. So but that would put them firmly on the bubble, right? Unless they were to win 2 in the Big Ten tournament, maybe, or something like that. And maybe they're on the right side of it ish, as opposed to being on the wrong side.
That's the issue. Is I think that they're probably on the right side, because the bubble is.
Right, first of all, talked about kind of going. Yeah, you've gone through that. Yeah, and so
the bubble's always bad, but
maybe the bubble's worse, so they just are slightly in a better position than they were in the last 2 years. But to your point, 4-10 is not where you want to be, right? They would still like to get a sneak another victory or 2, and that's like you said, if they sweep at home and get the Ohio State game. There's no guarantees though, because the team continues to be so dependent on whether they can shoot the three-point shot. It's a different team when they don't. It's hard to have confidence in what they can get when you're like that. And we thought they'd just be a little more, there'd be a little fewer off nights, because they had so much depth of shooting talent, but there just felt like way more man, just nothing is going in, or this half is just going off the rails. And that's I think where you just it's hard to like I said, I just thought they'd be, the improvement would be more consistent. And maybe I've talked about, I think you do get a pass, Darren DeVries does this year, because, first year in the Big Ten and everything, the roster construction just didn't work necessarily like he thought it would be. I think maybe he'd want to mulligan on a couple different things. Just the balance wasn't there with the way this thing was constructed.
Well, then let me ask you this, and maybe this is kind of a good place to wrap up. We'll podcast. We'll find time to podcast next week, even if maybe I do it on a day off or something. But what in your mind would constitute success? And let's separate out the football versus, bang my elbow against my desk. Let's separate out the football versus basketball of it for a second. And
for sure, you can't compare. No,
well, but we have contextualized this conversation that way at times. I think justifiably. I'm not criticizing us, but at times this year, that has been kind of an unavoidable part of this. But I think if we're just talking about basketball, and there is effectively a month left in the regular season, there's a month and 2 days left in the regular season, and I would say that for all that we're kind of sitting here and talking about, what Indiana hasn't done this year, what Indiana hasn't achieved, etc. The flip side is, they are probably going to be favored in at least 5 of their 8 remaining games, I suspect. And if they get to 20 wins, I think they're going to the tournament. And I don't think they're even going to sweat it that much. I think they'll be a 9 seed or a 10 seed. It won't be that impressive, but it also won't be, oh my God, Indiana's clinging onto the edge of the bubble.
But if they lose that Michigan State game, it's the opposite, and they're more on the bubble.
I'm talking
very thin
in large sort of philosophical whatever here. What would constitute in your mind for Darren DeVries success? If I told you right now, Indiana's going to finish 5-3, they'll be 11-9 in the conference. They'll win 20 games. Let's say they win a game in Chicago and then they lose, and they're a 10 seed that certainly doesn't get out of the first weekend. Is that success in your mind for Darren DeVries in year one? Is there anything below that is success for Darren DeVries in your mind in year one?
No, probably not. If they don't make the tournament, I think that's not a successful season. Would you say that's fair?
I mean, it is hard because of how much turned over, and some of that was by choice, some of that was forced. I do think it is probably fair to bring like the finances of it into it and say like, hey, if you're gonna spend what Indiana's going to spend in basketball, like there do have to be some basic like
I think you just kind of throw the regular
essentially, but
like I think you kind of throw the regular season out of it. I think the regular season was underwhelming based on how they kind of got off to a start. And you thought maybe this team would be able to put things together, and then they kind of got tripped up. But like I think ultimately, if they make the tournament and win one game, like that's a successful season for a first-year coach that turned over his entire roster. Like,
I mean, I certainly think if they win a game in the tournament, like that is,
yeah. But like if they were to fall short of the tournament, like you said, basically, like you're not spending like a team that has that as a built-in excuse. Like there are teams that can say like we just didn't spend enough money to make the tournament. Like Indiana's not one of them, and so like even if you have to replace everybody, I think the baseline expectation is you get to March Madness.
It's also,
but I don't think that impacts like, but I don't think that impacts like my view of DeVries or like will impact his tenure. Like I think people are talking about sort of like 3 years to make the Sweet 16. Like I think he'll have a long enough runway where this doesn't like sort of negatively impact him one way or the other. But in a vacuum, like I certainly think this wasn't what anybody wanted if they were to miss the tournament, right? Like I mean that's to me what it is.
I think like this is where I would like layer the bubble conversation in just a little bit, in the sense that like if this was some weird year where there was just a ton of like carnage at the mid-major level on the bubble, then maybe you'd sort of say, hey, we got a little bit fooled by those early. We thought Marquette was better essentially, and we got a little bit fooled by those early season results. And Indiana had maybe like a little bit of bad luck here or there or whatever, and they get some bid thieves snuck up and bid them, or like you could kind of live with that. Like this is such a high major bubble. Like it's just this is a bubble that is designed for a team like this, frankly, where it's right. Like, hey, listen, you don't have an overwhelming amount of quality, but there's also not a ton of bad losses here. You've got the metrics are going to, in all likelihood, hold up. That's frankly where, as much as anything else, like Indiana's got to make hay while the sun shines in some of these home games against like your Northwesterns and your Oregons in the next couple weeks. Just score a ton of points, make a ton of shots just to keep those metrics solid. Like this is a bubble that is designed for a team like this to get in, to be like a 10 seed. Like Bracket Matrix's latest update has Indiana in 100 of 105 brackets. They're the second 10 seed behind St. Mary's.
That's like up from 27 brackets like a week ago.
I mean that is a substantial improvement. They are right in the same mix with USC and UCLA, actually, who are the two teams right behind them. USC's in 104 of 105 brackets. UCLA's in 100. Like this is a bubble that is designed for a team like that. Not designed, but this is a bubble that has developed ideally for a team like this to just get in a kind of a forgettable way, to your point, maybe win a game, maybe not, and then just sort of say, hey, that was a good first year. There was a lot of proof of concept. We overcame some issues. It will never be quite as extreme of like a reload, rebuild, rethink as it was in year one. And now we move forward with a little bit more sort of consistency. I don't see a world where Indiana can miss the tournament and it does not feel like a disappointment, at least to a certain extent.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we're on the same page. But there's a path, right? Like, I mean, based on the way they've kind of been up and down. I mean, do you have are you like when you sort of predicted they win all the home games? Like, are you confident that that's the path they're on, or you say it's more like 60-40? Like, where do you sort of stand?
I would say that 5-3 is a reasonable close to the season, because if they lose to Michigan State, I think there's every chance they beat Ohio State, because Ohio State, frankly, is not very good. And Ohio State, like, it's funny, if you go look at Ohio State and Washington, like Ohio State and Washington are doing anyone who beat them at home a world of good, because their metrics will not crater, despite the fact that Washington has won like 3 times in 6 weeks, and Ohio State's best win all year is UCLA at home. Ohio State's second best win all year is West Virginia on a neutral floor in December. Like these are teams where, I mean, Ohio State as an example, at least at the moment, and anyone can turn it around. They are nowhere near the bubble, but that's a quad one win. They're 42 in KenPom. I think they're top 50 in the net. Like that's going to hold up for you. And I think if you're Indiana, and if we're talking about like what is a reasonable expectation, I'm not going to sit here and predict the exact score of every game. What's a reasonable expectation? It's reasonable to expect Indiana should beat Oregon, Northwestern, and Minnesota at home. It's probably reasonable to expect that Indiana should beat at least one of Wisconsin or Michigan State at home. And then basically you just need to split Michigan State and Ohio State. And if you get both, you're in great shape, right? If you get both, that's 2 quad one wins. That's another quad one win on the road, and you're all right. I do think, and this is, we talk about like giving yourself opportunity versus pressure. Like Indiana has not given itself opportunity yet. The pressure of this upcoming homestand and needing to go 2-0 on this homestand, I think is huge because I don't see a world where Indiana can compete with Illinois because of Illinois' size. And obviously Indiana can never legislate for the idea of winning at Purdue. Like that just, in the same way that Purdue can't really say, oh yeah, we're going to go win at Indiana. You just can't assume a result in Mackey if you are IU. So they've really got to go 2-0 here. If they do that, Illinois and Purdue are free hits. Win either of those and it's worth its weight in gold, lose both and no one will be surprised. And then you've got to find a way to go 3-1 in those last 4.
So, what's the most dangerous game?
Hold on. Hooperazzi says Oregon will be trouble for this team.
I was going to say, I
looked at Oregon. They had 8 healthy scholarship players. They're on the longest losing streak of Dana Altman's Oregon tenure. If Indiana loses to Oregon, then we don't need to have the conversation.
We could just keep talking about football for the rest of the spring.
I need you all to understand how bad the bottom 5 in the league is this year. It is so bad. I put the rankings together. They are terrible. And Oregon's most recent results, their last 4 losses have been by 16, 15, 16, and 18 points. And 3 of those 4 came at home. Oregon should not be a problem for this team.
And they have to play Purdue first. It's the the second of the road, the trip out here. So it's not, that is a brutal, if they lost that, you just pack it in and say better.
No, that would be like a yes, it's over without running the table kind of thing. And also, no, I will fight Nico Medved's corner. Minnesota and Oregon are not the same team. Like Minnesota has shown.
That's true. They've proven that wasn't a fluke that they beat. That loss has become better for Indiana.
Much better. They beat Iowa. They beat Michigan State. I mean, they had a stretch where they lost 7 straight games by 1 point, 3 points, 10 points, 8 points. There was a 19-point loss in there, and then 4 points and 2 points. That has been.
And they were ahead at half in those games. I think 6 straight games they were leading. I mean, not that that's, but I mean, they were competitive.
They should have beaten Ohio State. They should have beaten USC. They should have beaten Penn State. Nico Medved, he's obviously not going to win Coach of the Year, but he's doing as good of a coaching job as anyone in the Big Ten right now, frankly. Oregon, Maryland, Rutgers, and Penn State are just, and Northwestern's kind of down there. Northwestern at least has Nick Martinelli. There's at least kind of a little bit of and I mean, I don't want to over egg that pudding because Northwestern just lost by 40 to Illinois. But Northwestern, I think Northwestern is the only one of those 5. Didn't we talk about this on the last podcast? Wins against the top 13. I think Northwestern is the only one in the bottom 5 that is a win against the top 13. But no, I mean, if you're Indiana, 5-3, I think gets you into the tournament. I think it certainly helps you avoid Dayton, which is maybe
Zach really wants to go to.
Maybe the most important piece of all this. But this upcoming homestand is big because it's worth, it's even worth pointing out, it's a 2-day turnaround. You got to play Saturday and then you got to play Monday. Now it's Saturday afternoon and Monday night, but still, I don't blame the people that are in the comments here saying, come on, spring football game. April 23rd, Signetti, he confirmed that he did a podcast with the Fox guys.
Oh, nice.
He said they got something around here called the Little 500. It's like a bike race, and we're going to do it on the Thursday night. So,
they're still doing it on Thursday? That's weak.
2 quarters. It's only 2 quarters.
That's true.
Any other business?
Not really.
Yeah. It really does feel like normal service has kind of resumed here after I said to someone, I've said to multiple people, in fact, this week, I said, this is the first week since November. It hasn't felt like my world was on fire. Like I was at my son's basketball practice Wednesday night, and I had like this Pavlovian reaction that I thought I needed to have my computer with me to be writing something. And I realized that like all my work was caught up on for the first time in a while. Hoop says 76th anniversary team on Tuesday. That's actually on Monday before the Oregon game. They will be honoring the 76 national title team at the 50th anniversary of its success. He is Mike Niziolek. I'm Zach Osterman. This has been Mind Your Banners for February 5th, 2026. We'll be back soon. But for now, for the Herald Times, for the Indianapolis Star, check out the online store. There are, I'll pull it out here real quick and just pump it for people. Never Daunted. It's got all of our work in it. Some of it's even good. Some of it's even legible. The words are spelled correctly, which in my case is usually a really unlikely outcome. But please check that out. Thank you to everyone who picked up special sections in the HT, in the Star. I know I delivered a few of those around town this week. I felt like an extra in Newsies. Mike is back from LA, and just in time for it to warm up into the 40s, so he doesn't feel like he wants to run back out to the West Coast. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. We will talk to you soon.